So we are done with fossils, and in the next slide, or the second part of this lecture is actually more of biogeography. Biogeography means, bio means living, and geography means certain places, right? So we are going to understand the distribution of life forms and on different places on the earth. Is it okay?
It's okay. I'm just centering it.
Okay, so some very basic terms like plate tectonics. Okay, we live in California. All of us are so used to earthquakes, right? Almost like every month or so we experience a little shaking and all. So how does all of that happen? Okay, so if you think of the earth, if you can look at the cross section of the earth, that means we've cut the earth open and we see what are the layers that the earth is made up of. The innermost layer, the deepest part of earth is called inner core. Of course, we cannot go there, right? Above these, you see here this mantle, this red part is a very hot, viscous, liquidy thing. Okay, this is called the mantle. And on the mantle is very thin layer of solid, what we call ground, the ground that we step on, that is the crust. So imagine all the earth, it's only this outer very thin surface on the earth that we have a solid ground. Above this is very hot, viscous liquid. Imagine boiling, okay, hot. So this solid part, the crust, is not one continuous piece. It cannot be. It's broken into plates, it's broken into sections, and those are known as tectonic. Okay, the plates are known as the tectonic plates. And what happens is, as the hot viscous material, the mantle, as it is, because it's liquid, it's moving, so sometimes these plates also move. And when these plates move, they sometimes move or brush past against each other, and depends on how deep that movement is, how much will it go upwards. Sometimes it gives rise to earthquakes, right? We get this movement. Does anybody know the name of the fault here in California? Is traveling longitude? San Andreas Fault, yes. So now this all started as the earth was evolving. So even before life evolved, the earth was evolving. And when earth was evolving in the very early stage, 4-5 billion years ago, the earth looked very different from what it looks now. Now we have these oceans, Pacific, Atlantic, Indian Ocean and so on, and the different continents, Asia, Australia, Europe, Africa, North America, South America. But imagine those billions of years ago, the earth did not look like that, okay? In a process called continental drift, movements in the mantle cause the plates to move. So these are the different plates, okay, Earth's tectonic plates. You see these lines, those show the plates and how they can move. So so you will probably thinking this continental drift and this formation of these continents and oceans, what has this got to do with life? Well, because of the way they were formed, because of how they got separated from each other or joined each other, we know the history of life also, okay? Because life started evolving even before these continents in the present form were made. So continental drift impacted evolution of life's diversity. If you go back 250 million years ago, there was just one big super continent called Pangaea. So if you see here, in the Paleozoic era, long time ago, millions of years ago, this is what all of Earth's land mass looked like. One big supercontinent. There was no North America, no Asia, separated kind of like that, okay? And so if you join everything, you are reducing the shoreline. You are reducing the access to water. Then, as we move to more recent times, in the middle of Mesozoic era, it was about 135 million years ago, the Pangaea is separated into two land masses, okay? The Laurasia and the Gondwana here. And then you keep moving to more and more recent times. Slowly these two evolved into or led to the formation of, if you see here, North America, South America, Eurasia, okay, Africa. But if you see here, India was not part of Asia here. India was actually separate, okay? And there was a sea. between India and the rest of Asia. That was called Tethys Sea. So Tethys Sea was there, and then as the earth was still, it was a very dynamic environment, it was very volatile, and a lot of plate tectonics or continental drifts going on, and then it moved, and then imagine a huge land mass like India separated from Australia and other parts, floated on the ocean, on Tethys Sea, and then went and collided against what was Asia at that time. And when that collision occurred, okay, some landmass that got between them, it was moved up. And that is what nowadays you see as the Himalayas, the highest mountains on earth. So the highest mountains on earth actually, Ari, could you please take that down? Yeah. So if you look at Himalayas, you look at the layers of Himalayas, there are fossils of marine animals, fish, shelled animals. So people were initially, when research was going on, when people didn't know that the Himalayas at one point of time were under the sea, they were like, how come the highest mountains in the world, what's the highest mountain peak, does anybody know, in the world? Mount Everest, 8848 meters. So Mount Everest, at such an altitude, how are we finding fossils of fish and octopus and other sea life forms? And that's when research showed that this was a lot of limestone and this was, once upon a time, it was under the sea, and it was the Tethys Sea, and it was this continental drift that led to the formation of the Himalayas. So that was one big event in the history of Earth's evolution, all these continents forming and coming to their present day form. That means even geologically, the Earth it wasn't as if the Earth from day one was exactly, it looked like what it looks like now. No. Geological evolution, biological evolution, it's all occurred slowly over millions of years, over thousands of years. So second dramatic chapter, okay, I've already covered this. Pangea broke up, continental drift. Australia became separated from Asia. Have you noticed, do you know what kind of animals are found in Australia? Some very, very unique kinds that you don't see anywhere else on earth. It's because such a long time ago, was Australia separated, some of the peculiar kind of animals, they just stayed in, it was an island. So those animals, there was no migration to other land masses. Can you name some unique animals that you find only in Australia? Kangaroos. Koalas, lot of marsupials. Marsupials are those animals, are those mammals that give birth to their young ones, just like other mammals do, just like humans do. However, the young one is pretty immature. So the young one cannot survive outside the mother's some kind of help. And that's why marsupials have a pouch. They have a pocket. And the young one has to, have you seen the kangaroo baby, baby kangaroo inside the pouch of mother kangaroo? So they have to survive in there, and they get the mother's milk, and they need that environment to survive. If you take that away, that baby kangaroo won't be able to survive unless provided by special care. So about 200 species of marsupials are found in Australia. You don't see them anywhere else. For example, here are some examples. This is a particular northern coal, okay? Sugar glider, koala, different kinds of herbivorous or carnivorous marsupials. Now, some other important events in Earth's history are extinctions, mass extinctions, okay? The most famous one, the dinosaurs became extinct. So 5 mass extinctions over the last 540 million years. In each of these events, 50% or more of the Earth's species died out. Can you believe this? So we already lost diversity 50% because of these mass extinctions. Now whatever remained, of course, have continued to evolve. We got newer forms, but those are not present anymore. So 2 main extinctions are listed here, Permian and Cretaceous. These Permian and Cretaceous, they refer to the geologic times, okay? So this was the one, Cretaceous, when the dinosaurs became extinct except for the birds, okay? Now, extinction was a bad event. Yes, it was negative. It wiped out, some of the life forms. However, it was good news for us. Mammals could evolve because of these extinctions, because the new opportunities became available. So this is, you see, the diversification of mammals after the extinction of dinosaurs. So because dinosaurs became extinct, that's why you see these are the different categories of mammals that evolved. Mammals are broadly classified into these three categories: the monotremes, the marsupials, and the eutherians. The monotremes are those mammals that lay eggs, okay, like platypus. Have you heard of this word? This animal, platypus? So platypus is a mammal that lays eggs. Marsupials are those mammals that give birth to their immature young ones, like kangaroos. And eutherians are called the true mammals, okay? All the other mammals that you see, cows, dogs, elephants, and all. And these are about more than 5,000 species. So all of these evolved because of the extinction that occurred in the Cretaceous age. Now, mechanisms of macroevolution, large effects from small genetic changes. Why are we saying small genetic changes, large effects? Because these are macroevolutionary changes. Macroevolutionary means anything above the species level. However, these macroevolutionary, very big changes happened because of very small changes. Why? Because the changes occurred in the DNA at the molecular level. Right? Mutations, you have to always keep in mind, whenever there is life, there is mutation going on. Is mutation intentional? Never. Mutations are random events. Are all mutations good or bad? No. Mutations can be good, bad, or neutral. They are not intentional. So then who is the one that is deciding which mutations stay and which mutations do not stay? Nature. Natural selection, right? So natural selection is the one deciding, not mutations themselves. Mutations are random chance events. So evolutionary transformations can result from genes which change the timing and distribution pattern of changes in an organism's form as it develops from a zygote into an adult. That means if you look at the fetus, let us consider the fetal stage of a chimpanzee and a human being, okay? So this is very early on, right after embryonic stage comes the fetal stage, after 4 weeks of gestation. You look at the skulls in the fetal stage and then compare the same skulls in the chimpanzee versus the human beings in the adult stage. Which one has more differences, at the fetal stage or at the adult stage? In the adult stage, right? So this is what is again another proof of the evolutionary similarity or homology. Homology is when there is a common ancestor. So we say that the human adult retains pedomorphic features. What are pedomorphic? Pedo means pediatrics, children. So pedomorphic features are those features that are present in embryonic or child stage. So actually human adult, we retain more similarity with this skull as compared to the chimpanzee adult skull has changed more from its embryonic stage than the human skull, okay? So we have pedomorphic features. Our skull is more like our embryonic or fetal skull than an adult chimpanzee skull is. Now, evolution of biological something newness, okay, adaptation of old structures for new functions. This is an important feature of evolution. Not every structure, most structures adapted or evolved because there was a need for adaptation, okay. This was required, so as mutations occurred, for example, the neck in the giraffes, right. So mutations happened and then natural selection gave a thumbs up to whichever structure was performing the job the best. Function, depending on function. However, there are some structures which evolved not for the function that you see it doing now. Okay, it evolved for something else. But later on, as the environment was changing, that particular structure changed or evolved to perform a different function. And that is, an example is feathers. Feathers of a bird. They were not necessarily, initially made for flight. No, because birds had not even evolved at that time. It was dinosaurs. Dinosaurs, some forms of dinosaurs had feathers. Who was you were very interested in dinosaurs, right? So Archaeopteryx and other dinosaurs, they had feathers. And that feather was for what? For insulation. Meaning, anybody? What does insulation mean? Yes, Sarah?
Keeping warm.
Keeping warm. It was cold. So the feathers helped. This was like wearing a sweater. So it was helping the dinosaurs stay warm. But later on, mass extinction, dinosaurs were killed. Some bird-like forms of dinosaurs survived, and by chance, one or two of those dinosaurs climbed up the tree, could see the food, the rodents or whatever they could feed on, and they started hopping or diving onto them. From their flight evolved. So feathers helped them, and then feathers evolved into flight structures. They were not originally meant for flight. So this is a fossil, this is an extinct bird, okay? Natural selection remodeled the feathers and wings to fit their additional function, and this modification is known as exaptations. So it is an adaptation, but in a very special manner. It's called an exaptation. Important definition, okay? Structures, for example, feathers that evolve in one context but become co-opted or adapted to another function, they are called exaptations. Now, we all have to keep in mind as biologists, how long did evolution take? Didn't happen overnight. Hundreds, thousands, and millions of years, right? So that means, would you be able to see a change like in a population in one day? Never. It's not possible. Okay? And all of the big changes that we see today, the fact that human beings, we are bipedal, okay? We have perfect balance. We can stand on our 2 feet. We don't need to go on 4. We have opposable thumbs. This was a big advantage that we got because of our opposable thumb, we could make tools. We could grab onto things. This is the fact that our feet are not flat. The fact that, have you seen that your feet has curve? Why do you think that's important? What's the advantage of having that curvature that you see at on your foot versus a flat foot? Yes.
For running, maybe?
For running, gripping, yes. Balance. It's difficult to run fast if you have a flat feet, if you do not have that curvature. Okay, so all of these important adaptations that we see in present day organisms, human beings and other animals, these all things happened as baby steps, small changes, very little changes that happened over years, mutations and other things, and nature kept selecting them. Okay, so remember, baby steps. For example, this formation of a complex eye in an organism called mollusk. So we all animals, we have eyes. Do you think we one day one organism got these complex eyes that could see so many things and we just got it? No. The early whatever our ancestor was, when the eyes were getting formed, those were just few sensory cells. Okay, maybe photosensitive. They became photosensitive. Later on, they became more receptive to colors. They could differentiate between colors. Do you think dogs can see all colors? No. So now we know that different animals, different life forms have different capability of vision, right? With birds, you see the bird, if you look at the face, the skull of the bird, you see the eyes on two sides, right? It's not the front facing eyes, it's the side facing eyes. Their vision is very different. Life is so, I would say, amazing. Do you know that dolphins and whales, they are mammals, right? So if they are mammals, although they live in marine water, do you think they need oxygen? They need oxygen to come up, and that's why you see the dolphins and the whales coming up, right? So tell me, they are in the ocean. When they sleep, when dolphins and whales sleep, they will forget to come up. Why don't they die? Okay, Willow, yes.
Because only one half of their brain is asleep at a time. The other half of their brain is awake and conscious.
Good job, yes, this is an important piece of information. They have a very specialized brain. Their brain is like in two parts. So both parts of the brain, they don't sleep together. When one part of the brain is asleep, the other part is still awake. And the other part, the 50% of the part that is awake will help the dolphin, will remind the dolphin or the whale to come up, get oxygen, go back. And that's how they sleep. They don't sleep like 100% like us. Now coming back to taxonomy, I have already, in one of the lectures, we did discuss what is taxonomy. It's a branch of science that deals with naming and classification of species, because as evolution was occurring, as human beings, as we were learning about evolution and we were learning about different organisms, we had to name them. We just cannot randomly name an animal, right? There have to be some rules, and that is what is studied under, or put under taxonomy. So systematics, another term which includes taxonomy, focuses on classifying organisms and also determines their evolutionary relationships. That means which animal came from which, what is the lineage, okay? So biologists use phylogenetic trees. So when we learn about evolution, we create trees like this. This must have been starting, okay, from here there are 3 families and this family and so on. So this example is when we take the group called Carnivora, that means all carnivores. So this is put under the category, the classification category of order. Under one order, there are several families. What are these families? Felidae, okay, Mustelidae, Canidae. So if you take this Canidae, this is all the dogs, wolf, they are under Canidae. However, the cats, okay, leopard, tiger, all of these are not under Canidae but Felidae. So one example of a genus is Panthera. So Panthera pardus is leopard. Here is Canis lupus is wolf. So understanding the phylogeny has practical applications. Why? Because when genetically modified organisms are made, or when a disease is being treated, whatever, or disease, zoonotic disease that might have come from animals, moved to human beings, when we have to find the treatment for those, when we need to understand the bacteria or the virus that is causing the disease, we also keep, scientists also have to keep in mind the phylogenetic relationship. From where is this coming? Okay, what are these things? How can I change it? How much is the DNA similarity? What needs to be changed? So all of that. So genomes of plants may harbor alleles that offer resistance or useful traits that could be transferred into cultivated maize, corn. 99% of the corn that's available these days is genetically modified. And when scientists do create these genetically modified corn to get better yield, to make them resistant to diseases, of course they need to know the phylogeny. Now 2 important things, and I added this slide yesterday as I was going over the lecture because I felt like what I had was not explaining things well. So because I want you to remember some terms like, you all know homology. So homology versus analogy. These are 2 terms in evolutionary biology, and this one is due to divergent evolution. This is due to convergent evolution. Meaning, in simple words, let's try to understand. Homologous structures are those structures which share a common ancestor. That means their origin is the same, okay? So how would you know that their origin is the same? Is when you look at their anatomy, that means when you look at their structure, they have similar structure. I wouldn't say exactly same structure, but similar structure, okay? Functions could be same or different, could be similar. For example, our arm, or if you take the wing of a bat, okay? If you look at the wing of a bird, we have similar bone structure, although the functions are different. What you are using your forearm or your upper limb for is very different from what a bird is using its wings for, right? But if you look at the embryonic origin, they are same. So those are homologous structures. We call them homologous structures. So why is it that the functions became different? Because the evolution was divergent. Divergent means diversified. It becomes different. So homologous structures arise due to divergent evolution, okay? That means, remember, for homology, common origin, different functions. So there has to be some basic similarity, but they might be doing different things, but their origin is the same, so divergence. Now analogy is just the opposite. Analogy is there are some structures you might see in different, for example, butterflies use their wings to fly, birds also use their wings to fly. So apparently both of these have wings. So we will be tempted to think that the butterfly wing and the bird wing are the same structures. But if you look at their origin, if you look at their anatomy, they are totally different. So they are analogous structures. That means Their evolution is convergent evolution. They had evolved for different reasons. So their anatomy is different, but their functions became same. So evolution went like this. Convergent evolution. Okay. So analogy is due to convergent evolution. Homology is due to divergent evolution. Will you remember this and not get confused? I updated the slide on Canvas, so you will have the most recent one. Now this is identifying homologous structures. You of course see the basic, anatomical similarity, and nowadays it's even easier to know homology. How? Do you know? At the molecular level, what do you check? Genetics. You simply look at the DNA. You look at the DNA sequence, okay, you see the homology, yes. So now another important term, cladistics. Cladistics is where organisms are grouped together based on their common ancestry, right? So cladistics is looking for homology. A clade consists of an ancestral species and all of its descendants that came up or that evolved later on. It's like a tree of life. So cladistics is actually based on whatever Darwin had proposed, Darwinian concept. Darwin had proposed descent with modification from a common ancestor. If you cannot remember anything about Darwin, just remember this sentence: descent with modification from a common ancestor, because that's what Darwin has proposed. Common ancestor, mutations, natural selection, okay, and then they became different. So to identify clades, scientists would call, okay, these two organisms look similar. Are they part of an in-group or out-group? The in-group is the group of species that is actually being analyzed. The out-group is a group of species known to have diverged before the lineage. For example, here, these are all mammals. These are the in-group. They are being compared. And what would be an out-group? Let's take a reptile. They diverged way before the mammals evolved as a group. Reptile is not a mammal, right? So that is an outgroup. So this is a very, very simple, simplified cladistic chart. This is what cladistic tells us. So why do we need cladistics? To understand phylogeny, to understand evolution, to understand where is the common ancestor, where, at what point of time did they diverge. Now inferring phylogeny from homologous structures. Now all of these are very related, okay? Cladistics, homology, analogy, phylogeny. So cladistic approach to phylogeny clarifies evolutionary relationships that were, long time ago in taxonomy. Some mistakes were made. There is always a scope for mistake in science because science is dynamic, right? Science will rely on data, and as science will of course modify and change the statements as more and more information becomes available. So when taxonomy started, let's say in 1700s or 1800s, then at that time scientists didn't have access to DNA technology. They didn't have access to recombinant DNA techniques. So they would just rely on whatever they saw with their eyes, okay, anatomical features. So mistakes were made, but later on with cladistics and phylogeny and molecular techniques, scientists started correcting the phylogenetic trees. Like traditionally, biologists thought that birds and reptiles were put together because they thought all birds evolved from reptiles and all. So they are in one separate class together, birds and reptiles. However, later on, with more techniques, it was clear that birds and crocodiles actually are more closely related. They make up one clade, and lizards and snakes form another. So if you see here, as from a common ancestor, imagine a common ancestor here. The lizards and snakes, they diverged out, they branched out before. And then there was this common ancestor again. This common ancestor gave rise to the crocodiles, the dinosaurs, and the birds. So the birds are, at present, the closest relative that dinosaurs have left behind. Crocodiles are very close relatives of the dinosaurs. So in one simple sentence, if you have to define what's a phylogenetic tree, it's a hypothesis about evolutionary history. It's just like, we draw our family trees, right? So it's like a family tree of the earth, of the life forms, okay? And you have to keep in mind that this is again a very dynamic science. It keeps changing as more and more evidence it becomes available. Why? Because we are relying on fossils. We are relying on a lot of indirect evidence. Do we have fossils for all the life organisms that were available? No. As more and more dinosaurs more and more fossils become available, we get more and more information. So in mid 1900s, when students in a biology class, they would learn about the biological classification system, okay? The whole of all of kingdom, all the living forms were divided into 2 kingdoms, okay? It was like, okay, all living organisms, 2 kingdoms, maybe like plants and animals, something like that. But this was replaced by a 5-kingdom system later on. And then we learned even more about microscopic organisms. We learned about bacteria. So that were placed under prokaryotes in 1 kingdom, and then divided the eukaryotes. So let's look at the earliest organisms. So these are the earliest organisms, means again ancestors. So from these ancestors, the first group that evolved was prokarya. That means that includes all prokaryotes. Can anybody again remind the class, what do you understand by prokaryotes? What is the difference between prokaryote and a eukaryote?
Prokaryotes don't have membrane-bound organelles.
Good job. Prokaryotes do not have nucleus. They do not have any membrane-bound organelles. Examples are bacteria. They are all prokaryotes. So the prokaryotes evolved first. Okay, eukaryotes came much later. Actually, prokaryotes survived for millions of years just by themselves. There were no eukaryotes at that time. So under the prokaryotes, we put bacteria and another group of organisms very similar to bacteria. We call them archaea. So both of these are under prokarya. And the next group is the domain eukarya. Eukarya means all organisms that have nucleus, they have membrane-bound organelles. And under this domain eukarya, we have kingdoms. Okay? And kingdoms include kingdom Animalia, kingdom Plantae, that means plants, this means animals, kingdom Fungi, all the fungus, and then this one is actually a miscellaneous group. Okay? These are together known as protists or protista. Protists includes multiple kingdoms. Why do we have this miscellaneous group? Because life is so diverse. There were so many different types of organisms that scientists were saying they could not be put under this group. No, does not meet the criteria. Could not be put under this, does not meet the criteria. Could not put under this, does not meet the criteria. So they pulled everything that did not meet any of these criteria. They put it as protista. Okay, and protista has fungus-like organisms, they have plant-like organisms, and they have animal-like organisms, but they are not animals. So that means if you hear the term animal-like protists, are they animals? No, they are not. Plant-like protists, are they plants? No, they are not. Fungus-like protists, they are not fungi. Okay, so this protista is a miscellaneous group, and that's why there are multiple kingdoms here and other groups. This is a very broad classification of the living world today. This is the last slide, I believe. So the Anthropocene, which is generated by us human beings, we cause so much change in the world. This is a time of environmental change on an epic scale. So I am not going to talk about what are the changes. I want to hear from you what you guys think about the changes in Anthropocene that we have brought about. Could you stop this? We're done. Yeah. So think about it for a minute and then tell me.